Been a while. Do you ever just wake up or go to sleep and think, what's going on? Why are we just going to go around and around with this? I mean, I used to be pretty sheltered about things. Like, they actually use our tax money to kill people. We, I should say, we actually use our tax money to kill people. If you were living in Germany in 1936, let's say, what would you have done? It almost feels like childish or embarrassing to ask that. Hysterical. It shouldn't be necessary to resolve the debate about where exactly we are at right now as a global population or a US population or whatever country you're in. We can't agree, okay? We're not going to be able to agree exactly what the situation is, exactly how bad it is. But as a thought experiment, what would you do if you were in a place where your state is engaging in horrific wrongdoing? Now, what would you do if that's been your entire life and it's just been a process of slowly awakening to it? This is not really about the US. It's certainly not about the election results. This is about history taking place all over. And the more I hear and learn about history and modern history, the more disempowered I feel. And the more overwhelmed I feel at the forces stacked against me and just like people. But there is also real power that we have. There is. When you think about the problems in the world and try to boil them down, it's a lack of accountability, but it's also it's minoritarian rule. And what the majority always have, by definition, is numbers. The minority spends a lot of time disempowering elements of the majority and convincing the majority that things are okay. 150 years ago, maybe it was convincing the majority that it's actually not a big deal for children to work 12 hours a day. I mean, if you want to get hysterical about it, well, we can make it 10 hours. But you're actually doing the kids a disservice. There is real strength in numbers when people can get on board with a cause together. And the truth is, we have a lot of causes we could get on board with each other about. And we do. But not quite enough, right? Like, the situation is bad. Climate change is a fairly good example of this, right? I'm not invited to these climate conferences where the rich countries give out less than a third of what they're asked for. But problems like that, problems like healthcare, climate change, police violence, they're caused by a small number and they affect a large number. that large number has more power on a fundamental level when other things get neutralized. I mean, strength in numbers is very real. And I didn't always know this, but they have to make communism illegal. Like, you know that, right? Like, communism, socialism has been made illegal in many countries. Many times. They actually kill communists. You know that expression, first they came for the blank? Go look up who the first blank was. And then look up the history of, just take like a given country. Just kind of choose one at random. Italy, Turkey, Indonesia. Just choose a country and look up the history of how socialist politics have been treated. Because when things get to a certain point, democracy becomes off the table for the minority. The only thing that makes democracy work for the minority is that they can manipulate a lot of things to make the democratic situation go how they want. When the democratic situation doesn't go how the minority wants, which is obviously to maintain the status quo and to maintain property ownership and management rights as they generally are, when things don't go that way, they do whatever they need to. We really are sheep to them. They really do isolate themselves in boardrooms and palatial luxury residential mansions and apartments, and they do what they want. And then as long as we are satiated, we have the bare minimum. I'm not going to necessarily tell you what you can do here. I don't obviously have the answers to this. What I know is that sometimes I can't sleep at night. And sometimes I lie awake at night before I maybe get a little sleep or after, before I decide to get up, and I lie there and I think, this is not working. We're just going around and around, and we're not making progress enough. And it's unacceptable. Do you find things to be acceptable? Most people want pretty similar stuff. Most people just want to be able to chill out with their friends, family here and there, get food, get their healthcare needs met. But there is also the higher level, I want to also live in a world where other people get those things too. Like, that's also part of it. And we are severed from that part of us. You know how many people can't pay their bills? Can't live in any degree of comfort? Can't live in safety? It is wrong. It is wrong. It is not okay. It's unacceptable. Everyone needs safety. It is completely unacceptable for our country and for our world to not be prioritizing people's basic needs. I find it very hard to feel any motivation to make YouTube videos. I'm working on a script for the last 6 months. Every few weeks, I'll work for a couple hours on a controversial YouTube channel and the problematic things they've said and what it says about how we accept people's growth and change. Who cares? Who cares? Yeah, we get it. Interesting. In my work as a therapist, I do my best to help people. And I can help some people. And there are other times I come up short. And I try. And I'll keep trying. But I do ask myself, going back to that question of 1936 Germany, or whatever year and place I need to say to bring to mind the concept of the deterioration of society. To bring to mind the idea that hopefully universal groups of people can get on board with, besides the absolute fringe, and say, yeah, that was a bad situation. That was a situation where people should have done other stuff. There's a quote that's written beautifully that I'll butcher that's like, when it's all over, everyone will be saying they were always against it or something. It's like, going back to a situation like that, what if I was a therapist there? I mean, I'm Jewish, so it would have been a little bit of a problematic situation for that. Let's pretend I'm not Jewish. Let me put on my non-Jewish hat for a second. I'm working in Nazi Germany, 1936, whatever, 1937, and I'm a therapist. I'm a psychoanalyst back then. Well, they still exist, but wouldn't that start to feel kind of silly? Like, at what point would it actually... At what point would it become silly? And then at what point would it actually become unethical? Like, at what point would it actually be not even right for me to be doing what I was doing? I'm not saying we're at that point in the United States. So you don't have to comment that I'm hysterical. Actually, I'll probably turn off comments. Because it's a waste of your time. You don't need to be commenting on YouTube videos. And it's a waste of my time reading them. We only have one life. And the analogy of being a therapist is actually kind of moot, because really any job you do, at what point does it start to feel ridiculous when there are so many problems that are unacceptable in your state, city, neighborhood? At what point does it actually become unethical to act normal? Is that a stupid question? I don't think it is. Let me know in the comments. Unacceptable is the word of the day. When things are unacceptable, then you don't want to accept them. And what does it mean to not accept circumstances? You can't end your life. I'm sorry. It's just not a solution. I was going to make a video on that too, but I probably talked about it enough in other stuff. You don't have to do that. That's not a good call. Don't do it. If you're thinking about that, you need to take care of yourself. And you need to take care of yourself in general. Drink a lot of water, exercise, talk to friends. But when things are unacceptable, how do you bring about your lack of acceptance? How do you manifest your lack of acceptance? Because the Instagram story is not quite doing it, right? It's not quite doing it. Is this video doing it? No. It's a step towards me. I can't be normal on this platform. I'm not, maybe I'll go back to it and I'll just change my mind. It's hard to pretend to make content. It's hard to just make content. There's so much of it. And if you're watching this and you make content, I don't blame you. Do whatever you want. It's good. It's all good. But on a bigger scale, start to think about how you really show. If you actually don't accept things, make sure that's clear. Because if it's not clear, then it might not even really exist that you don't accept it. You might mentally not accept it, but things are sort of, I'm trying to use a word other than manifested. Materialized. Withholding your work, withholding your labor, we could say. It might be one of the most powerful things that you have at your disposal. I mean, most of the people watching this cannot stop working. I can't stop working. But it really might be a good idea to think about how you could put yourself in a situation to make that something that is more possible. And I personally think about that a fair bit. How might I, over a short or long term, bring my costs down? Because I do think that stopping working is powerful. It's the only way to grind things to a halt. And I'm going to be honest, I don't believe in violence. I don't believe in violent protest. I don't believe in committing acts of violence in service of social change. I don't believe in it. I don't think it works. I don't think it works. I think it's too risky, and I think it's not okay. But if you stand in the street with a sign, they'll allow it until it actually causes a problem, and then they will. I mean, did you watch the George Floyd uprising? Did you watch what they did? Did you watch all the tear gas and the rubber bullets? Did you watch all the real lifelong injuries people incurred? Did you see that guy the cops pushed over and he hit his head on the sidewalk? I watched that in real time, I think. Horrifying. And then all the reporters getting shot with rubber bullets. They don't care who you are. And then if you go out in the street with a gas mask, now you're suspicious. Because they're using tear gas on you and you want to continue protesting. That's suspicious. Now, protesting is very valuable. Withholding your labor is one of those protests. It's a form of protest. I know it's not possible, as I said, for most people. I do think it's actually smart to start lowering your costs as much as possible so you can do as little labor as possible if and when the time comes, or now, or whenever. My understanding of economic stuff is not perfect, but my understanding is the cost of living just keeps going up, and it drives us to feel that we have to devote ourselves to work just to have a standard of living. Now, you don't want to make yourself destitute. You have to meet your needs. But what's the point of giving yourself a comfortable situation if you are, in the same way of doing that, disempowering yourself from contributing to what might actually matter a lot more than your own personal success? I do art. I like being a therapist, but the deepest thing to me is being an artist. But what's the point? I'm not delusional enough to think that my art is who cares? Like, it really doesn't matter. What matters is people having their needs met, people being safe. The worst aspects of animalistic nature that we have being controlled and held accountable. So, you're probably thinking, okay, this is a bit much, but I get it. Maybe you're a little bit sympathetic. You're like, I get it. Totally, man. I hope this, makes you feel better and stuff. But I'm not gonna quit my job. I don't think you should quit your job. What I think you should do, though, if you didn't, you probably do this already, but ask yourself, like, at what point do I need to show that I find things to be unacceptable in a more obvious way than I'm showing it now? And if things are really unacceptable, am I accepting them or am I not accepting them? And if I need to, one day or soon or in the distant future, demonstrate that I do not accept this or that, how can I put myself in a situation, how can I make it so I will be better able to demonstrate that I find the situation to be unacceptable?